welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. If not, welcome. My name's Ashley and I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. I had a really great reading month in March and I have solely been putting off this wrap-up because I read Othello in the month of March and I still have not given it a rating. I don't know how I feel about it. I absolutely loved some aspects of the play and others I found to be so incredibly annoying that it really has put me in a position where I don't know how I'm gonna rate it still. Like, when I think about it, I still have very fluctuating emotions about it, so I don't know where this is gonna end up on my ratings, but I'm gonna try and update all of you guys in my April wrap up about it. Hopefully. We'll see. Other than that, I have my storygraph on my phone because I just feel like storygraph is really great at giving me a vast amount of ratings, so my ratings are more accurate on storygraph, and also because I can filter it out for the specific month so I won't forget anything. So the first book I actually finished in March was Just Mercy, which is a story of justice and redemption, and it's by Brian Stevenson. It's like a nonfiction book and it goes into mass incarceration and the death penalty in specific, and I found it to be amazing. I honestly always have a hard time focusing on nonfiction books, so I don't read it as quickly as I read other genres, especially because a lot of the nonfiction I've been reading recently is specifically to learn, they're educational, and because of that I want to take my time with it. However, this story is broken down in a way that is both educational and really delves into the stories of these individual people and cases, and because of that it was a really amazing read. I have never been so focused doing a nonfiction book prior to this. I cried at several instances just because of the level of injustice that you get to see throughout this book, and it was absolutely amazing. I also picked up another book in April because of this book that is actually a fiction book because I wanted to understand more so the concept of what was going on here. But this was a 5-star read. It was so challenging and so emotional, but also a story that needed to be told and experiences that needed to be shared. So, really loved that. The second book was also a 5-star for me. Honestly, I have a video planned based off of this book because that's how much I enjoyed it. But it's Kyrie Macaulay's If These Wings Could Fly. This story in specific delves into domestic violence, intimate partner violence, as well as almost this paranormal aspect. The house is said to be alive, quote unquote, and it breaks and repairs itself, and that aspect was so interesting that I wanted to really delve into the book. And then when I got into it, I saw how beautiful the writing was. I felt the story was really well told in a way that wasn't over the top. It felt very genuine. You felt genuine fear while reading the book. You felt the frustration of the family and the family members. You felt how isolated the instances felt just because of how this small town acted about things. And it was so well done. There's a subplot of romance as well, which didn't overtake the book. You got to see how this was the main character's truly her only way to escape the issue she had going on in her household, but we didn't have that as the main plot. She was definitely dealing with these things at home. It was definitely having a large impact on her, and it was so well done. I really, really enjoyed it. Also 5-star. After that, I read Animal Farm by George Orwell. I gave that one a 5-star as well, which I was super surprised. I've been reading through classics for a couple of months now, and I have not fully enjoyed anything I read, but this one I felt it was a pretty quick read. It was really fun. I loved all of like the metaphors that like take place in the book. The ending I thought was like really amazing, honestly. I was genuinely taken aback because I really did love it. Even the characters through the animals, like, you get to know them and you get to really like love them and appreciate them and feel bad for them, and the experiences they go through with one another but also with humans and humankind, and it was a really good read. After this, I read A Nordic King, which is the third book in the Nordic Royal series by Karina Halle, and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. I know this is definitely like a huge 5-star read for a lot of people who love romance in like the booktube community, and I gave it a 3.5. I specifically loved Axel's story and I loved Aurora's story, but I didn't like them as a couple as much as I thought I would. It's definitely the pacing for me. I felt like as much as I loved the second half and I loved them like coming together as a couple, their like period where they weren't friends, they weren't like partners, and they hated each other didn't feel angsty enough for me. It didn't feel like there was like a genuine longing. And then the interactions that they did have with one another, I didn't find them to be like as sweet and endearing as I thought I would. When it comes to like any like form of hate to love, I definitely want to feel either like deep longing, angst, or at least see moments between the two characters where I feel like, wow, that was a genuine sweet moment and I can see how they're starting to fall in love. For me, that didn't happen. I definitely could analyze how they felt in love, but I wasn't like emotionally like connected to them and their story, so it wasn't like a huge win for me. But I will say that Axel, oh my god, the things he said to Aurora were just absolutely swoon worthy, and that's why I got a like 3.5, because he really was getting me some of these lines. I was like, wow, I want somebody to say that to me. But so fun. I definitely suggest it. I have another book later on in the month that I also gave a 3-star to, and I think that it could be a 5-star book for so many other people, so I definitely suggest it if you haven't read that. But after A Nordic King, I read Heartstopper Volume 2, which I actually have somewhere on my shelves. Oh. Wow, prepared. So I read Heartstopper Volume 2. I had read the first volume, loved it. I think it's here. Loved it, and was really excited to read Nick and Charlie's story as it continues. At this point in their like relationship, they've gone from friends to being like boyfriends, and you really get to see how they like bond with one another, the like issues that come up, like the homophobia they have to face, and it's so sweet because you see how even outside of their relationship, they care about each other so much as people and as friends that they're really willing to like make a lot of changes for one another. And it was just so sweet and so beautiful. Ugh. And like the parents in this world are just amazing, really like supportive, and it's really fun to like read because of that. A lot of the time in YA, because it's like a young adult story, we don't get to see the parents as much. I see the same thing in like middle grade. Unless the parents are like depicted to be a villain, we don't tend to see parents as much, as more so the adventures of like the children. But the parents are present in this book, and their roles are A, super important, and B, they really care about their kids, and you see that, and it was so good. 5 stars. I mean, in general, you'll see, like, unless I am seriously not liking a book in terms of graphic novels and comic series, it's usually a 5-star. But I also tend to try not to pick up graphic novels that I know I'm not going to like, because those are some of the few books that I tend to still buy. So, loved it, suggest it. I might sneak and go on Webtoons and finish it before then. After that, I read Lady Isabellas' Scandalous Marriage. This is the second book in Jennifer Ashley's Mackenzie's and McBride series. I absolutely adored this. There is trigger warnings here for miscarriage, but it's not super detailed or anything like that. It's more alluded to. But the two of them are just in this point in their relationship where you can tell they're still in love. They really care about each other, but there's like a lot of hurt and pain between Isabella and Mac, and there's like a lot of guilt on both sides. And because of that, they're in this weird position where they still love one another, but they don't interact. They would love to be together, but there's all this pain and hurt that they have to overcome. And I definitely think that they both did it very well with one another. I love how like headstrong and determined Mac is to truly apologize to Isabella. And I love how even though she's hesitant and really doesn't want to give him like a second chance, she definitely still loves him enough that she wants to protect him and she's looking out for him. And I thought it was so amazing. We also get to see a little bit of Ian and Beth, who are characters from book 1 in here, and that was really great for me because I adored book 1. And I also love to see how Isabella cares about Beth and cares about Ian, and how Cameron and Ian also care about her. We don't get a ton of heart in here, but this was so good. 5 stars. I really enjoy some series in terms of historical romance since I've started picking up since last year, but so far this is like the series that I feel like is the strongest, and I'm very excited to continue it. If you want to pick up historical romance, I definitely suggest starting with this because this series is honestly amazing. After that was Othello. We already know how that went. We don't know how it went, that's the issue. And then I read Milligame by Shauna Maguire. This is the second book that I said that I gave 3 stars to personally, but I feel like this could definitely be a 5-star book for other people. I thought the book was really well done, and it definitely kept me interested in a way that books along the same like line and genre of like both fantasy and almost like sci-fi wouldn't keep me interested. But because it's so heavily based in alchemy, and that's a little bit too much like science fiction for me, it was definitely hard for me to understand every single point of the book. I definitely felt like sometimes I was confused as to what was going on. But I will say that Shauna Maguire really has like a knack for truly really explaining it well. If I was confused like the first time I read something, by the end of that paragraph it was like fully fleshed out and explained. So it's definitely like a great starter point for anything like that, because you will get like a full explanation and a knowledge base that you probably wouldn't have had before. The issue for me and where this book fell flat is that I couldn't connect with the characters. We go through the story of like Roger and Dodger, who are twins but are genuinely like other halves of themselves, and they've been created through alchemy. And because of this, they definitely have the sense of like almost emptiness and loss because they're twins and they're the other half of one another. And they're able to, like, for a long time to have these like interactions with one another, but we get to watch them grow up from childhood to adulthood, and by the end of their book they're around my age, like 26, 27, and I still was unable to connect with them. I still felt like they were really annoying to me just because they definitely struggled hard with their identity and who they were and what they were because of like these experiences they were having. And as much as I understood that, it was hard to connect with them because they were making a lot of decisions that I felt were childish, especially in instances when they were with each other and able to interact with one another, where you felt like they should be like stronger as their united front. They were still struggling a lot with what it meant to be together as a unit and what that could mean for like each other and the world and the people around them. And that was like super difficult for me. However, I will say that it's one of those books that you read, and even if you don't personally like it, you can see all the merit that's in the book, and you can see why other people would love it. So I definitely say that it's a 3-star for me, but it could be a 5-star for you. So if you've ever been interested in it, I definitely suggest picking it up. After that, I read Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade, and also 5-star read. It was so good, so sweet. We go into the story of Marcus and April, I believe. Both of them are like part of this huge fan fiction community for this show that Marcus actually acts in, but they don't know each other. It's like true, genuine identity. They just know each other for their like online personas, the work each other does, and like their interactions together on this like forum. And because of this, Marcus is at a disadvantage when they actually start to interact. April posts a photo of herself where, I mean, rather not a disadvantage, he's at an advantage and puts April at a disadvantage. But she posts a photo of herself where she's in cosplay, and she gets a lot of backlash because of fat phobia. And he sees what's happening, and he reaches out to her. He thinks that she's gorgeous. He hates what's like happening to her, and he offers to take her out on a date. They go out, and he feels like they really connect, but he finds out that she is actually the girl that he interacts with online, and he doesn't tell her for the longest time. But because he omits it for so long, I really understood like the third act conflict, because I got where he was coming from, and I really understood like the pain and hurt and anger that she had. And I felt like in terms of romantic conflicts in the third act, this was one that I wasn't annoyed with at all, because I felt like anyone would be really hurt and really angry over omission for that long. So I thought it was amazing. It's also a couple who's a little older. I think they're in their 30s, and we don't get to see a lot of that. So if you're interested in that like age demographic, that's present here. We also get to see Marcus's personal struggle with his dyslexia and his relationship with his family because of his dyslexia, and we see how he's able to use a lot of tools and resources to work through his dyslexia and manage it and still be able to follow passions that he has. But we also see how his dyslexia has really altered a lot of the ways that he presents himself and he views himself to be, because of how hard his upbringing was because of his dyslexia. And April has like a very similar instance in her like childhood and like her upbringing, but through fat phobia, where she has like a really strained relationship with her mom, because her mom has always been like on her about her weight. And we get to see a little bit more of why later on in the book. And we also see how that's really difficult for her, because she cares about her mom so much. And she also has had these same instances with like partners in the past, so it's even more hurtful for her. But throughout the book, both of them are able to stand up for themselves and each other, and it's really well done. Super, super was into it, and I think it's going to turn into a series, so I'm very excited about that. Then I read Honey Girl, which I also have on my shelves. I never take books out. It's somewhere. I don't know. And it sucks because, honestly, one of my favorite reads of the year. I don't see how another book would like top this at this point. And it's by Morgan Rogers. It was absolutely amazing. I read it at the perfect time because I'm about to graduate from my graduate program. I definitely am feeling like a lot of anxiety and fear because of that. And I was able to really see myself in Grace. It's still like a really fun book because Grace ends up getting married in the first chunk of the book in a Vegas-style wedding. She does it pretty spontaneously, so she doesn't even know what her wife's name is in the beginning. And we get to see like that relationship fold out. And as that unfolds, we really see how Grace is struggling with her mental health, the stressors of her life, society and society's views, because she is like this black woman. She's queer. She's in academia, which is like very stressful. And she also has this like strained relationship with her father, where her father is really hard on her and she feels like he doesn't support her, but there's a lot of background between every single person. And it was just an amazing story. A lot of the writing is like almost lyrical. It's so beautiful. And you really like felt pain for every single character of the book. Everybody's been going through a lot of like difficulties, whether or not they voiced it. And a lot of the instances you see how amazing the found family is. She has great friends. Her like father and stepmother, her mother and like her boyfriend, and then her wife in that community as well. And it's so great to see, just because Grace is truly and honestly struggling, and no matter how she really acts, people are there and looking to be there for her. And even when they're frustrated with her, it's usually because they want to support her and they feel like they're unable to, or they can't because they don't know what's going on. And it was amazing. I felt like all of it so strongly as like a black person in academia. So I definitely suggest it. Even if like you're not a person of color, I definitely think that it's worth the pickup, especially if you're going to graduate right now. And it had me crying at some bits, but it was so good. The next 3 books was me being bad because I basically stopped listening to my TBR, and I read like the next 3 books in like Cora Riley's like series. I read Bound by Vengeance, which is the Born in Blood Mafia Chronicles. That's book number 5. And I'm thinking of stopping there in the series, so then from there I started the Kimura Chronicles, I believe it's called. Yes. So Bound by Vengeance is Growl and Kara, and it is the first book from that series that I absolutely adored. I gave it a 4.5. There was definitely something missing for me, and I don't know what it was. But I really love Growl and Kara as characters. You can definitely see that they've gone through so much with their families, and there's been a lot of like betrayal and hurt. But despite that, they're really able to bond together in this situation where neither of them really expected it. A lot of it is because Kara was engaged to be married to somebody else, and then things get changed and she ends up being given to Growl. And before she was given to him, they had a connection, and it was very clear that they were both intrigued by one another. So when she's given to him, she's absolutely enraged, so mad, and she has the right to be, and she's mad at like so many people, including Growl. But because she has like that basis of like finding him attractive, being really intrigued by him, being interested in like who he is and what his story is, and him in turn feeling like she is honestly the best thing that has ever happened to him, they're really able to connect with one another over time, and you see how much they like grow to care about each other and like fall in love with one another, and it is just so sweet and so well done. And I feel like Kara is just really good for Growl because she gives him a lot of stability and love and support that he's not had before. And she also teaches him about how much he deserves in all actuality. And in turn, he gives her like the excitement and love and like passion that she felt like was lacking from her life before. And he does anything for her, and it was just amazing. It was so good. Like, that book pretty much convinced me that I was going to continue on with the series, because as much as I found them fun and enjoyable, I wasn't enjoying the beginning of the series at all, but that book was amazing. The first book in the Kimura Chronicles fell off a little bit for me, but I still really enjoyed it, and it's setting up a new section of the world. So that one is actually Fabiana's story, which is the youngest of the Scuderi family. at this point, he basically is working in Las Vegas, and he's the enforcer for the Las Vegas Camorra, which is the Italian like mafia that's over there. I forget the girl's name, which proves it was a 3-star. He ends up finding Leona one day, and he's just really into her immediately. It's not an insta-love story, but you can see how her background and his background are very similar, and they definitely have like this calling to one another that both of them don't understand. He immediately wants to protect her, and he does so much to ensure that he can. And it gets to the point where honestly, like, the Camorra and, like, his found family in the Camorra are starting to feel like he's no longer loyal to them because of how much he cares about Leona. So it causes a lot of, like, personal strife in his life and his, like, support systems. And he continues along that path as much as possible because he genuinely loves Leona. He wants to be with her. And he understands that, like, she needs him, even though she doesn't want to admit that. It takes Leona a little longer to admit to herself that, like, she loves him. And both of them take a while to admit to one another that they love each other. But you can definitely see throughout every single instance of the book how much he cares about her, how much he wants to take care of her. And it's very sweet in particular because you see a lot of the same, like, passion and, like, nurturing nature from Fabiano along the first series, just because he cares about his sister so much that it usually puts, like, his safety on the back burner and his, like, comfort on the back burner, but it's because he genuinely cares about these people, and it was so sweet and so good. The rest of it I can't say because it spoils, like, the first series. For me, the only thing is that I felt like there was almost too much conflict, but once again, it's because we're building, like, this larger story. So just like Bound by Temptation, where we go into Liliana Romero's story, there's just so much going on because we're building and building and building to, like, this larger, like, mafia war. So that's why it kind of fell off to me, but I definitely feel like the story is super sweet. It's definitely worth the read, and it's, like, a great introductory book for, like, the Camorra Chronicles, which then I read Twisted Emotions. At one point, I literally posted on my social media and I was like, wow, I can't believe that Cora Riley's really trying to make me fall in love with a sociopath, and she's succeeding. Because it was amazing. I gave that a 4.5 stars, and honestly, I might bump it up because I'm still thinking about it. There's trigger warnings for this book in specific about sexual assault and, like, childhood sexual assault, so if that's something that bothers you, that's definitely there to consider. But in this book, it's Nino and her name starts with a K, but it's very close to Kara. Is it? Yeah, it's Kiara. So it's Nino and Kiara's book, and they're just amazing. Nino's said to be, like, the brother who has, like, no emotions. They think he's a sociopath. He's always been super logical and clinical about everything, even when it comes to, like, the things that they need to do as part of, like, being the mafia and as part as, like, gaining their seat back as, like, the head of this, like, sector of being, like, the Camorra and everything. And it is just so well done. From the very first instant, even though he's, like, said to be this person who's not emotional, he does not care. Like, he's like, this is my wife and I'm taking care of her. She, like, will bring up the smallest thing and he will make sure to get it done for her. I got caught off because I've been talking for so long, but basically I was saying that Nino is super considerate, like, towards Kiara, and, like, every single thing he's like, I'm willing to meet you where you're at, and I'm willing to really go slowly with this so you're comfortable. This is, like, your home, like, you're part of this family. And he even, like, makes sure that his brothers are in check because they're used to a certain lifestyle, and she's pretty much the first girl who's, like, genuinely in the home. They have been around Leona. I already forgot her name. They've been around Leona before, but she doesn't live at the house with them. So this is like the first woman who's like genuinely in their house, and because of that, there's a lot that they have to reimagine and work around and like take out of the household to like make her be comfortable. And they're definitely annoyed with her a lot, but he really, even though he says that he doesn't understand feelings, and that's like the understanding of who he is as a person, he tries hard to understand where she's at. And if he doesn't ask her a question, he tries to see how she's feeling, see how she's breathing, how quick her heart rate is, and then changes his behavior for her. And it's just so sweet. And you definitely see that even though it's really hard for him to feel because of his past, when he does feel emotions towards Kiera towards the end, they are so strong and they're so caring, and like you could tell how deeply in love they are, and it's so well done. And I think like you also get to see a lot of Nino's and Ramo's interactions with one another as like brothers and like the oldest brothers of the Kimura, and it's so sweet. It's such a good book. I definitely suggest it, unless you feel like the trigger warnings would be too much for you, but as always, these are dark romances. Please look up the trigger warnings. But that is the end of that really, really long wrap-up that was very chatty. Thank you for joining me. If you stayed this long, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.